And we start with breaking news tonight. A bombshell announcement potentially impacting hundreds of children living in our state.
12 News has learned that state health inspectors plan to take a rare step in stripping 13 migrant shelters of their license to operate in Arizona.
Yeah, the shelters have come under scrutiny in recent months, and one big question looming tonight: what happens to the kids? We already knew the state's largest shelter provider for immigrant children was on shaky ground after cases of suspected abuse at Southwest Key shelters surfaced earlier this year. The state opened an investigation, demanding, among other things, proof of fingerprint background checks. But it appears Southwest Key could not deliver, instead providing disorganized, incongruent spreadsheets the state called useless. In a letter dated Wednesday, Department of Health Director Kara Christ slams the organization's inability and unwillingness to comprehend Arizona's most basic licensure laws. It doesn't stop there. Christ writes, Southwest Key's lack of ability to deliver a simple report on the critical protections these children have against dangerous felons demonstrates an utter disregard for Arizona law. Chris says she's moving forward to revoke licenses at the 13 Southwest Key shelters unless the company can prove it's following the law. Immigrant rights activists tell 12 News tonight if Southwest Key closes, the children living in the shelters face either being fast-tracked to be reunited or, more likely, being transferred out of state to other shelters. That could create another layer of confusion in the ongoing efforts to reunite families. We have not yet been able to contact Southwest Key about today's notice. The company said during the investigation they fully supported expanded oversight and looked forward to working with state investigators.